Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, over 2 weeks ago, a woman called Mary Kerr died. Mrs. Kerr was a survivor of symphysiotomy, a woman whose family was very active in fighting for justice for the survivors because she wasn't able to fight for herself. A justice that she will now never see. Now, yesterday the Tánaiste, in a question from Deputy Adams in relation to the Magdalen laundries, made the point that time is not on their side. Well, time isn't on the side of the survivors of symphysiotomy either. And last week the Taoiseach told us that the reason for the delay in dealing with this issue was that the Minister for Health was looking at the final Walsh report, a report which incidentally he's had now for 7 weeks, that the government wanted to consider it and ensure that the appropriate treatment for the women concerned. Now, what is he talking about? There is no appropriate treatment for symphysiotomy. The damage that was done to these women decades ago. It cannot be undone. Many of them have had 25 operations. Some of them never left their homes. Husbands effectively lost their wives and children their mothers. This isn't a matter of health. It's a matter of justice, and comparisons with the Magdalen laundries are totally inappropriate because we're talking about personal injuries as a result of gross medical negligence. And I think, Tánaiste, that your party colleague Fergus Finlay identified earlier this week that the Walsh report, the draft Walsh report, was a much criticised document, and of course it was, because it was based on a central flaw that the barbaric practice of symphysiotomy was medically acceptable, and that is simply not the case. The idea that the final report is going to add anything, I'd have to say, would be highly suspect. So why are we really waiting? And the only conclusion I think that you can take, and that many of the survivors are taking, is that far from grappling with the legacy injustice as best you can, that the government would actually appear to be engaged in an attempt to deny access to these ageing victims to the courts by long-fingering these issues, while at the same time holding out the possibility of redress. In other words, to sort of coerce them into acceptance. And I don't make that point in any way lightly. This House unanimously supported Deputy O'Quailon's bill to lift the statute bar to allow those women access to the courts. We should have dealt with that legislation by now. And I'd like to ask the Tánaiste, are you aware that the national membership of survivors of symphysiotomy, who represent 98% of the victims, have unanimously voted 2 weeks ago to reject any redress scheme based on a Magdalen-type arrangement, and instead have urged your government to negotiate with their executive for a just and fair settlement of their legal actions? Can you, before the House breaks up for the summer, give those women the assurance that your government will listen to what they've said and deliver that solution for them?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Yes, I can give the assurance that this government will listen and is listening to the symphysiotomy women. This is something that has been an issue of concern from the government from the very beginning. It is an issue that the Minister for Health has decided to address. It is an issue that is raised frequently with government by members from all sides of the House. And I know in my own case was an issue that was raised by a number of my own parliamentary party at our meeting yesterday. So it is an issue that is of immediate concern to the government. The Minister for Health is considering the steps that can be taken on it. I understand that he is to bring proposals on that to government in the near future. And I want to give this the assurance before the House rises that yes, this issue is being addressed by the government and is being addressed very seriously.
Thank you.
See, there can be a problem in listening and actually hearing what people are saying, because there have been a huge amount of words said by the government on this, but your actions actually would indicate that you are embarking on a path which is directly contrary to the wishes of the women involved. Now, they have specifically said that they are not interested in any redress scheme whatsoever based on the idea that symphysiotomy was medically acceptable. What they've said is they want a public acceptance by the various defendants, incidentally people who were practising in private hospitals, so it's actually not even going to cost the state a huge amount of money, but that the operations were negligent and performed without clinical justification or consent. And they also want payment of damages to the victims in the range of £250,000 to €450,000 for those victims. And those figures are not bandied about lightly. They're based on a substantial haircut of the amounts which the courts have already awarded some of these victims who have endured serious damage. So what the question is, and it really is yes or no if you are actually listening to it, will you ask the State Claims Agency and the Minister for Health to engage with the executive of survivors of symphysiotomy who've been mandated to represent the women to reach a just and fair settlement of their claim outside the idea of a Magdalen-type redress scheme?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, I think it is fair to say that that this government has, I think, a record of dealing sympathetically and with justice in respect of long outstanding issues that really needed to have been dealt with over the years. We intend to deal with the symphysiotomy issue in the same way. Now, I'm not going to anticipate what proposals the Minister for Health is going to bring forward, and I don't think that anybody in this House would expect me to do so. He'll bring those proposals forward to be considered by government. But I can assure you that he is dealing with the issue urgently, he's dealing with the issue sympathetically, and he is willing to engage with the victims and the sufferers, people who have suffered in this area for quite some time.